Hey, we have working, or rather appears to be working, HydroBoost plumbing for a, there, look down in there, see it? That's the one for the main power steering rack. For my BarraStang. Want to see how I did that? Tune in. We are at a point where we can actually mount our, cut all of our hydraulic lines. This is my hydraulic line cooler for my power steering slash brakes HydroBoost. Basically prototyped it. I just wanted something that would come across and hold this strongly, and it does. So that's mounted. Steering rack is mounted. HydroBoost unit is mounted. Power steering pump's mounted. I need to cut lines. Low pressure lines are easy. The high pressure lines for this I've decided after much thought, probably too much deliberation. The power steering lines are going to come down off of here, okay, and hit the power steering rack area down there and run across the power steering rack out up this side, across this area here, into that hole there will be the high pressure line. I believe this is it. It could be this one. I believe the secondary is this one. So off of this guy here, we'll run the second line. It will go down, following the same path, all the way to the input for the power steering. So that's all the high pressure lines. Then the low pressure lines are even simpler. One comes off of there. That's a low pressure barb. Goes down, tees in right down here somewhere, comes out, comes off of the steering rack. I'm trying to find that. I can't right now, but there's a really nice barb coming off the steering rack. There it is right there. It's in sight. So we'll tee together, come out here to this, feed in, come out of here, go back onto the steering rack, come over, hook up to a filter about here. The filter goes to here, so that's only about 4 or 5 low pressure lines. So wasn't too bad. My main issue at this point is this power steering line, which is clearly not zip tied to anything I'm going to use in the future. I need to be able to run it smartly, so it's probably going to run like that. I'm going to probably hook it to this actual bracket, and then it'll come down onto the steering rack like you see there. This is just to keep it out of the way of moving automotive parts. Then it runs along the steering rack to there. I probably will in real life zip tie it right to the low pressure thing, since that's part of the steering rack and it'll be a known location, and that's about where I want it to come out. And then there is some slack in the system, so if I have to rearrange this line I can. It will be tucked against this K-member, not where you see it there. I just zip tied it to a known distance so that I could get my final distance to my top here. Okay, so it's not rocket science here. It's a lot of, this actually is more creative than it is analytical. You have to kind of think, where's this thing going to go? What are the fewest kinks in this thing? How can I keep it out of the way of, you know, steering components, the sway bar? I go down a list of things that thing could hit. So I have to keep that in mind as I'm, you know, finding a route for it. Okay. In this case, there's something not so obvious. It has to clear the inlet tube of the radiator. Anyways, now I got to cut all these zip ties and cut that end piece there and make my first. Well, we got our first line cut. Yeah, it's a little loose right now. No big deal. I'm not mounting these lines final, but the first line, the pressure line, is in place. You can see it's got a nice clear path here. It's going to go along here, along the steering rack, plenty of line. Not a whole lot of kinks. You know, it'll have a nice bend to it here, probably about like that. I might build like something that bolts to this bracket to hold it in place along with the low pressure line. We'll see. But the good news is we have one down and one to go. So let's get started. I've got my pressure fitting here. I'm going to pull the other one off the steering rack. This one came off of the HydroBoost actuator. And once I get that one off, I'll run the two pieces. Let's just illustrate what that's about. So get a moment to see this. Basically, inside of these, you've got your squash brass. They call this an acorn, I think, or something. I don't know. I see Australian people and English people call it something different. Olive. Anyways, this part you save out along with this part. This part goes on your line, okay? So your line, in my case, I bought it from Summit, comes in 10-foot sections. So let's open this one up. And illustrate, if you plan ahead, you can save yourself an enormous amount of grief. So one of these is going to go on to fit the other end of the line, and what I do is I fit it on in advance, okay, like that, and it's backwards because it's going to go for the other end, and then I take a piece of tape and get it far away from the work so I don't have to worry about it, and I tape it just rough. Don't get it too tight. I had that happen just a minute ago. It was a real pain in the neck to get loose. But that'll just keep it in place. It's a placeholder for when it comes time to use it. Okay? It's still going to want to slide. Doggone it. Hope you can see this. I'm just half-assing this thing like crazy today. But any kind of tape will do. Just get it up out of the way and saved. And don't lose these two pieces. Obviously, you're going to need them for planning work. Okay, so this guy is somewhat stationary. I'm going to fit the other end of this thing, get it off the steering rack, and put it on the way that it belongs so that when I stick this thing together, it's pre-cut, so one end of it's fine. The other end is the end you got to worry about. So let's get there. So I disassembled my other end off the steering rack, and there's my crush collar, separate and ready to mount. And so I'm going to take one of those olives, so to speak, and I'm going to stick it in this end and crush this all together and make one of the ends and hook it up to the hydro. Alright, we have our high pressure lines cut. I still have some nylon washers to insert into these are fittings that go metric to AN. Everything's AN6 for high pressure, and everything's a 90-degree elbow, and that worked out really well. Yeah, so at this point, all I need to cut are the low pressure lines, which are nowhere near the hassle of cutting the high pressure Army Navy grade stuff. It's just cut to length, use a hose clamp, and you're good. And so the path from here is similar to what you see here. The line will go up and around, come out this hole over here. I know those lines look wonky, but they're cut to length, and when I tuck them, they'll all fit the right length. And there's a little bit of spare and looping area where I can take up the slack. It'll come down here to the steering rack low pressure output. So the low pressure output of the brakes will tee up with the low pressure output of the steering rack. They will both go in here, out here. The line will run back along the steering rack and up to here to a filter. And let's look at that T in that filter. Here's my tea. Here's my filter. I mean, it's really is not rocket science, folks. Just got to get started. Well, that was fun. It's a little warm today, so I was sweating a bit, but all the lines are cut. Everything's in place to prime the power steering pump with fluid, and I've got enough fluid for probably 2 or 3 runs here. I forgot to leave it disconnected, I think. I'm trying to remember how this works. I fill that with fluid, pump until I leave the cap off is all I do. Pump until it comes out. Stops using fluid. It'll start coming out the reservoir. So, oh boy. And I thought it would be really hard to replace this pump, but apparently it's a really common GM pump. So, say I do fry that pump, no biggie. I could probably even get a bigger capacity one. So let's take a look at like the lines and the way they run. They're a little loose and roughed in right now. I've room to zip tie in some loop area if I need to tighten them, but you can see them coming out the front the way that they should. I put my T right there, and everything's kind of tucked and out of the way. I kind of like it. I decided to loop directly over and into the hole here. I think my Coyote swap is almost identical, except I used a friend of mine used AN line, helped me set AN line up. I decided just to use transmission cooler line for the return lines on a hydraulic, because I know too many guys who say it's just fine, and it doesn't make sense to go spend the extra money for AN line, other than, you know, maybe, you know, chicks will see your AN line and be impressed or something like that. I have no idea. I am all for practical. There's only 2 high pressure lines needed here. You can see they're loose. I have to put some nylon washers in each one of these metric to AN conversions. They're loose because just to get them the right length. The low pressure lines are all, however, are all tight. So I ran into I thought I had bought enough low pressure line. Turns out I was short about 8 inches. Do you see it there? And this piece of line actually came from the transmission cooler kit, which is what that is, which I'm using for a power steering cooler. Same thing. So all of this is documented, and there'll be a link in the description on how to set up your HydroBoost. It's not rocket science 100%. The cutting of AN lines, you can find tons of really useful YouTube video. I wrap my AN line in plain old electrical tape, and then I use a steel cutting wheel to cut the thing as square on the end as I can. I don't have any special tools other than a pair of magnetic jaws, for aluminum jaws, so that I can easily crank the ends on. So those are my main tools I have for putting that line together. But anyways, at this point, I need to put those nylon fittings in, nylon washers in, and prime the system. And it is so hot today, I'm just going to take a small break. I might pick up again tomorrow. But we are making progress. Once the system is primed, I have to replace the fuel in the tank, hook up the fuel lines, which I have all the fittings for, and wire up about 7 or 8 wires. 2 of them are the ground wires for the engine, ground and power wires for the engine. So, you know, those are right here. Actually, this is one of them, and the other one's on the other side. That's what this is. It goes to a bolt on the motor. So, hook those bad boys up. Wire up there's ignition wires and power to the PCM and some things like that. And Maybe Ben will be here. He'll turn the key. I don't know. We'll see. We're getting really close to first start, folks. Well, I took my all of my metric to AN conversion lugs, except for the one that had the O-ring built into it, off of my HydroBoost. After talking to Andrew Reardon, these are the Dorman nylon washers that are recommended. I just don't see it. They look too small to me. And from reading some forums online, people use different washers. I'm going to try these. This is clearly just not going to cut it. It doesn't seat well. Whenever I tighten this down, it comes out deformed, like you see it there. It doesn't come out like it's been used. He recommended, Andrew James Reardon recommended I boil them. I did. They didn't seem to change any. So I'm going to give it a shot with these and see if it leaks. If it doesn't, then you'll see this video. It doesn't leak. These are like $6 a piece. You get some extra washers, some extra O-rings. They're just a Dorman part number. I think they're made for sealing different types of gasket situations. Bought the M12 and the M14 for M14 and M16 respectively. In other words, this one is supposed to fit, but I had to do a little bit of minor clearing to make it fit, and then it's still pretty tight. But I think that surface is gonna squish on there the way it should, and I'll have a nylon seal, which is what I'm after. We'll find out. Well, this isn't my ideal solution here, but the Barra pump clearly uses a threaded fitting that's 2 or 3 threads shorter than this part that would normally fit a HydroBoost pump for a new Edge Mustang. So I'm kind of in my own space here, so I ground off the top 2 threads. I'm just documenting in case somebody wants to try the same pump. Alright, I got the lines run with the new washers. It looks hopeful. We'll know here in a bit if it leaks. Giving it some debate, and I'm just going to start the motor and run it in short bursts. First start stuff is always kind of touch and go anyway. I got to swap some gas before I do the first start, and attach 5 wires that I've already tested. So with that, I'm going to call it a video series for this HydroBoost plumbing. It's your pump. This whole pump setup that's documented will work for a Barra, I think. We'll know here in a bit. And for a regular Mustang with a disconnected power steering fill, that is also documented pretty much with this same setup, almost the same exact fittings. So hope this helps somebody. It's going to be a rather lengthy video, and I'm posting it after I do the first start, so I don't bore people to tears. And people that do tune in will probably want to see how this works. So thanks for tuning in.